Hello and welcome back to another pawn endgame. I know those are your favorites, so in today's video I will show you two instructive puzzles. They aren't very difficult, but if you aren't careful enough, trust me, you will mess this up pretty easily. So let's get started with the first one. It's black to move and win this game. Our pawn is 3 square away from promotion. White pawn is 3 square away from promotion as well, but we have a pawn on h7, which can stop white from pushing to g6. In order for him to do that, he will first need to play pawn h5 and only afterward pawn g6. This means we don't need to worry with white pawns at the moment, and we must focus on how to promote our f pawn. We can clearly see that we cannot push the pawn, because white will play king to e3 and will win our pawn next turn. So we should start with king f5, a move that will give us multiple choices. We plan on bringing the king to g4 and we can escort our pawn, or we can take white pawns. As I said, a lot of options over here. We will look at two possible defenses from white, and the first one is with king to d4. Again, we cannot push because of king e3, so we continue with our plan and move to g4. White responded with king to e4, and now we can push the pawn. King e3, and here we need to start being careful and not be greedy by capturing white pawn on h4. Even if we end up one pawn up, the problem is that we have a rook pawn, and we know those pawns are harder to promote due to the fact that they are on the edge of the board. Here, we won't be able to kick white out of that promotion square, no matter how hard we try. King h5 is met with king h3. King g5, we have king g3. Pawn h5, king g2, h4, h2, and so on and on. We can see that we cannot promote our pawn. Okay, going back, in this position we are closer to promotion, because as we said in the beginning, white needs to waste a move with a5 to support pawn to g6. This is why the correct continuation here is to promote your pawn. And we do that with king g3. Pawn h5, and we don't care about white going to g6 because we will promote first. If white play king to e2, then we are forced to play king g2 if we want to win this game. And if white plays pawn g6, we promote and move queen f7 or f8, depending if white will take your pawn or not. Again, going back, what if white doesn't play king e3 and instead will prepare the pawn push? Here, you don't need to be scared and start taking white pawn, because you will end up in the similar scenario with white arriving on h1 first, and this will end up in a draw. If white moves pawn to h5, you will ignore that threat and promote your pawn. f2, pawn g6, and you can even ignore that pawn takes, and you can promote, because you can easily stop white from promoting his own two pawns. Now, let's see if white tries another defense with king e2, trying to put himself in front of our pawn. Here, white plan is to sacrifice his two pawns for the h1 and stop us from promoting using opposition. So let's see how are we gonna deal with that. The winning move here is king g4, because if you have played king e4 for example, this would allow white to accomplish his plan, and he will sacrifice his pawn for your pawn, and this, as I said, it's a draw. If you push pawn to f3, white will place himself in front of the pawn, and now you are forced to go after white pawns, because if you made a random move, white will be able to promote this. Here, white will push the pawn, and you won't be able to stop it. In this position, if white would have taken your pawn, then yes, you could have drawn this game. Okay, and if you are trying to go after the pawns after white play h5, as I said, white will sacrifice his two pawns to get opposition, and we know from our previous video that this position is a draw. Okay, going back to our original position, let's see the winning move. So we have king g4, and white respond with pawn h5, preparing pawn g6. If you are thinking that the last time the correct move was to ignore that pawn and to push your own, this time you will be wrong, because after king f2 you are forced to take white pawns, but unfortunately for you, this will result in the same scenario with white arriving on h1. Here it's safe to take white pawns, because white wouldn't be in time to capture your f pawn, and being 2 pawns up in this scenario is a pretty easy win for black, sorry guys. Okay, now I think I cover all the possible lines here, so let's go see the next one. Okay, in this position is black to move and draw the game, but I would explain this from both sides because there are a lot to learn here, especially for white. We have a 2 versus 2 pawn endgame, but white will capture your e pawn next turn. The advantage you have is that you are closer to promotion and you can easily win white pawns with king d2, which is the first correct move in this position. Now, I say that in this puzzle, white has a lot to learn because I think many players in this position will take the e pawn and they will try to capture the d pawn after that. But if they would do that, they will be losing this endgame. Black takes, and you will be 1 move too late to capture black pawn, and you are blocked from going to either c4 or e4, and black will promote this with ease. The correct move is actually king to e5, because if black will take the c pawn, you will start by capturing the d pawn, and only after that you will capture the e1, ending this in a draw. Okay, we see what happens when blacks take the pawn, but what happens when we play king to e3, trying to defend your d pawn? Well, this actually will be a blunder, because white can capture your c pawn, and now you will be the one who will be too late to capture white's last pawn, and white will be able to promote this. Here you don't have any other move, you can go to e4 because of the pawn, and king f4 is met with king d5, and again this position is a very losing one for black. If you want to defend your pawn, you must do it from c3, because if white wants to take your pawn, we see the same scenario from the first example, with black being the one winning. In this position, white must keep aiming at that d pawn, because it's the most powerful piece black have, and if you will be able to promote it, this game will be over. This is why he need to play king e4, because king d6 or king f4 will result in the same previous scenario, with white losing. And now here, black's best move is to go back with d2 or to take the pawn. Both moves are drawing, and draw is the best outcome that black could achieve in this position. So yeah, that will be all for today's video. I hope you learned something valuable for those 2 endgames and you'll apply them in your games. So take care and see you in my next videos. Cheers guys!